My CEO replaced me with his incompetent son during a multi-million-dollar merger, assuming I'd quietly accept the demotion. The kid posted a viral selfie from my desk, captioning it, "Finally running this place." He didn't read the contract's morality clause. I did, and I destroyed them. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I shouldn't have been there. My doctor had been explicitly clear. Donna, if you step foot in that office before your stitches dissolve, you are signing a waiver against your own health. I was 3 weeks post-op from spinal fusion surgery, the direct result of 16 years hunched over a keyboard, building the logistical architecture that was about to make Martin Vance a very rich man. But today was day 0. The acquisition team from Luxec Industrial was due to finalize the transition protocols. This merger was my baby. I had written the code, I had courted the buyers, and I had spent the last 6 months translating Martin's vague, visionary, hand-waving into a coherent systems strategy that actually functioned. So I ignored the throbbing ache in my lower back, swallowed 2 Tylenol, and drove to the office. I felt fragile, a little gray in the face, moving with the stiff, careful gait of someone terrified of a sudden sneeze. I needed this day to go smoothly. I needed to hand over the keys to the kingdom, sign the retention agreement, and finally take a breath. I swiped my badge at the executive floor entrance. The light turned green, but the atmosphere felt wrong immediately. Usually at 8:00 a.m., the floor hummed with the quiet, nervous energy of analysts prepping for the day. Today, it was silent. Too silent. I walked down the corridor toward my corner office, the one with the ergonomic setup specifically designed for my back, the one I had earned after saving the company from bankruptcy in 2012 and again in 2018. The blinds were open. That was my first clue. I never left the blinds open. The morning sun glared off the monitors. I pushed the door open, my hand trembling slightly from a mix of pain and adrenaline. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the crisp scent of lemon pledge and expensive coffee. It was sickly sweet, cotton candy vape smoke mixed with the stale musk of expensive cologne applied without irony. Then I saw the feet. There were sneakers on my desk. Muddy, knockoff designer sneakers, caked with wet earth, grinding into the polished mahogany surface I had kept pristine for a decade. They were attached to legs clad in ripped designer denim, which led up to a 25-year-old man-child wearing a hoodie that cost more than my first car. He was leaning back in my chair, my Herman Miller Aeron, adjusted specifically for my surgical recovery, spinning it idly back and forth. He held a vape pen in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked up as I stood in the doorway, clutching the doorframe for support as a spasm of pain shot up my spine. He didn't scramble to get up. He didn't apologize. He grinned, a wide, vacuous expression that signaled a complete absence of intellectual activity. "Yo," he said, blowing a cloud of strawberry vapor toward the ceiling. "You must be Donna. Pop said you'd be chill." Chase Vance, Martin's son, the boy who had flunked out of 3 state colleges and was currently finding himself. "Chase," I said, my voice rasping, "what are you doing in my chair?" "Oh, right," he chuckled, finally swinging his legs down. He didn't wipe the mud off the desk. "Pop didn't tell you. I'm shadowing the transition, taking lead on the optics or whatever. Gonna be the face of the new era." Before I could process the absurdity of that sentence, he held up his phone. "Hold on, the lighting is fire right now." He angled the phone, pursed his lips in a way that made him look like a confused trout, and snapped a selfie. Not near my desk. From it. With my monitors, my family photos, and my hard-earned awards visible in the background. I watched frozen as his thumbs flew across the screen. "And posted," he announced, turning the screen toward me. The image was high-definition arrogance. The caption read, "Finally running this place. Day 1 CEO New Era." He had tagged himself at the headquarters. He had tagged the company. My stomach turned over. It wasn't just the disrespect, it was the sheer, suicidal stupidity of it. We were in a quiet period. The acquisition contract had morality clauses thicker than a phone book. And here was the CEO's son claiming he was running the company, sitting in the chair of the senior vice president of systems. I looked at him, then down at the mud smeared on my desk, and then at my own reflection in the glass wall, pale, in pain, standing upright only by sheer force of will. "You have no idea what you just did," I whispered. "Relax, Donna," he scoffed, scrolling through his feed. "It's just content, you gotta build the hype." The betrayal hit me then. It wasn't Chase. Chase was a natural disaster, a force of chaos. It was Martin. Martin, who knew I was recovering from surgery. Martin, who knew I was coming in today. Martin, who had given his son my keycard and told him he could play boss in my office. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The pain in my back was suddenly eclipsed by a cold, sharp clarity. It was a sensation I knew well, the physiological shift from team player to adversary. I didn't yell, I didn't flip the desk. I didn't lecture him on the fragility of 9-figure mergers. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked out of my office. "Yo, where you going?" Chase called out, his voice already distracted by the dopamine hit of incoming likes. "I need you to show me how to log into the admin thingy. I want to see the truck maps." I kept walking. I made it to the copy room, a small, windowless sanctuary near the elevators. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so potent it felt chemical. I closed the door and leaned against the copier, closing my eyes for 10 seconds. Breathe in, breathe out, execute. I wasn't just the SVP of systems. I was the architect. I knew where the bodies were buried because I had dug the graves. And more importantly, I knew where the escape tunnels were. I pulled out my phone and opened the internal server access. Access Chase was currently trying to figure out. I navigated to the legal drive, a folder I had bookmarked 3 months ago during the initial due diligence phase. Acquisition Agreement Final V4, PDF. I sent the file to the printer. It whirred to life, spitting out 300 pages of dense legalese. I didn't need all of it. I flipped through the warm pages until I found it. Clause 7, Reputational Integrity and Operational Misrepresentation. I grabbed a yellow highlighter from the supply cup. The squeak of the marker on the paper was the only sound in the room. I highlighted the paragraph. Any public misrepresentation of executive authority, or any action by an employee or affiliated party that causes reputational harm during the transition period, shall constitute a material breach. I highlighted the next line in pink. Granting the buyer sole discretion to terminate the agreement immediately without penalty. Martin had fought to remove this clause. He had called it paranoid. The buyers had insisted, citing the volatility of the market. Martin had signed it because he was greedy and assumed he could charm his way out of any misunderstanding. But he hadn't accounted for a geotagged Instagram post. I folded the page and slipped it into a plain manila envelope. I stepped back out into the hallway and nearly collided with Martin. He looked impeccable in his navy suit, the picture of the benevolent leader. But when he saw me, his smile faltered. He scanned my face, looking for the adoration he was used to. "Donna," he boomed too loud, "you made it. How's the back? You look sturdy." "Martin," I said, my voice dead flat, "Chase is in my office." Martin waved a dismissive hand. "Ah, yes, the boy wanted to get a feel for the command center. I told him, if you want to learn, you sit where the magic happens. I figured you could mentor him today, show him the ropes. He's got a lot of fresh ideas." "He's wearing mud-caked sneakers on my desk," I said, "and he just posted a selfie claiming he's running the company." Martin laughed. It was a nervous, hollow sound. "Oh, stop. It's just social media, Donna. It's how the kids communicate. It's harmless. Besides, he's family. We need to start thinking about legacy." "Legacy," I repeated. "Exactly. Look, I know you're rigid about protocol. But Chase is going to be part of the new board structure after the buyout. He needs to feel empowered. Empowered, I said again. Martin's smile hardened. The mask slipped just a fraction. Donna, look, we appreciate everything you've done, truly, but let's be honest, the heavy lifting is over. The system is built. Now it's about image. Marketing. Chase has that. Spark, you're tired, you're recovering. Why don't you take a half day? Let Chase shadow the team. You can come back tomorrow for the signing. It was a dismissal. After 16 years. After the missed Christmases. After the surgery. He was telling me to go home so his son could play pretend with the system I built. He thought he was being kind. He thought he was giving an old workhorse a break while the thoroughbreds took the field. You want me to leave? I asked. Just for the afternoon, Martin said, patting my shoulder. It took everything I had not to recoil. Rest up, you look like you need it. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the weakness around his eyes, the vanity that had led us to this point. Okay, Martin, I said soft. I'll go. He beamed, relieved that I wasn't making a scene. That's a team player. We'll see you tomorrow. He turned and strutted down the hall toward my office, presumably to high-five his son. I watched him go, clutching the manila envelope against my chest. He thought the system was self-sustaining. He thought the heavy lifting was done. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They thought the machine ran on code. They didn't realize it ran on my code. And they certainly didn't remember the specifics of the intellectual property addendum regarding third-party middleware that I had filed, signed, and updated every single year. Martin thought he was sending a tired employee home. He didn't know he was sending the ignition key out the door. To understand why this moment shattered me, you have to understand what I gave up to build this place. 16 years ago, this company was 3 guys in a warehouse with a spreadsheet and a van. I was the first hire who knew how to turn a computer on. I built the tracking system on a laptop balanced on a stack of cardboard boxes. When the company couldn't make payroll in 2010, I deferred my salary for 4 months so the drivers could get paid. When the servers crashed on Thanksgiving Day 3 years ago, I left my family dinner, my first grandbaby's first Thanksgiving, and drove into the office to rebuild the database manually, eating vending machine crackers while Martin texted me, "Good luck," from a ski resort in Aspen. I had missed anniversaries. I had ruined my posture. I had grayed my hair and hardened my heart to make this company efficient, profitable, and attractive to buyers. And through it all, there was Martin, the idea guy. Martin was the kind of CEO who read one article in Forbes and decided we needed to pivot the entire business model on a Tuesday. He was charismatic, sure. He could sell ice to a polar bear, but he couldn't deliver the ice. I delivered the ice. I built the sleds. I mapped the route. He was the face, I was the spine, and I was fine with that arrangement, until today. I walked back to my office, Chase's office, to get my purse. Chase was still there. He had spun the chair around and was now poking at my keyboard with one finger. Yo, Donna, he said, not looking up. What's the password for the HR drive? I want to see how much the warehouse guys make. I bet it's peanuts, right? LOL. I stared at the back of his frosted head. He was wearing a gold chain over his hoodie that probably cost more than my annual bonus. He was the embodiment of everything I despised: unearned confidence, casual cruelty, and a total lack of respect for the labor that made his lifestyle possible. Chase, I said, my voice steady, I'm leaving. He spun around, confused. Leaving, but who's gonna show me the truck map? You're the visionary, Chase, I said, picking up my purse. I looked at the framed photo of my dog on the corner of the desk. I wanted to take it, but that would look like I was packing up. That would look suspicious. I had to leave it. I'm sure you'll figure it out. He scoffed, rolling his eyes. Whatever, it's just software. How hard can it be? I built a website for my DJ crew in high school. Right, I said, just software. Hey, he said, stopping me as I turned to the door. Does this system track the corporate cards? "'Cause Dad said I get a card, and I need to know if the limit is soft or hard." He wasn't asking about the logistics. He wasn't asking about the clients. He was asking how quickly he could drain the accounts. "It tracks everything, Chase," I said. "Every single penny." "Creepy," he muttered, turning back to the screen. "I'll have to find the delete button for that." He laughed at his own joke. I walked out. I passed the open plan office where the developers sat. They looked up at me, their faces anxious. They knew. They had seen the Instagram post. They could smell the incompetence wafting from the corner office. "Donna," called out Sarah, my lead engineer. She looked terrified. Are you going somewhere?" "Martin gave me the afternoon off, Sarah," I said loud enough for the room to hear. "Chase is in charge of the transition today." The blood drained from Sarah's face. "Chase, the DJ son. He has fresh ideas," I said, quoting Martin, "about optics." I walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. I could feel the panic rising in the room behind me, but I pushed it down. I had to be cold. I had to be surgical. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the empire I had built, I pulled the manila envelope out of my bag. I wasn't going home to rest. I was going to my car to send an email. Martin wanted me to leave. Fine, I was leaving, but I was taking the future with me. The parking lot was quiet, the midday sun reflecting off the rows of commuter sedans. I sat in my car, engine idling, the AC blasting against the sweat that had broken out on my forehead. My back throbbed, a rhythmic reminder of my physical vulnerability, but my mind was sharpening into a weapon. I opened my laptop on the passenger seat. I didn't connect to the corporate Wi-Fi. That would leave a log. Instead, I tethered to my personal phone's hotspot. I wasn't just angry, I was terrified. Not for my job, I could get another job tomorrow, but for the legacy of my work. Chase wasn't just a nuisance. He was a liability that could trigger a federal audit. His comment about the delete button for corporate expenses wasn't a joke. It was a glimpse into his ethical void. If the Luxec auditors found any financial irregularities during the transition, the deal wouldn't just collapse, the SEC would get involved. I had to trigger the fail-safe before he could do any real damage. I opened my private email client. I had a draft folder labeled simply, "In case of emergency." Inside was a single email template I had written 2 years ago, the day Martin first mentioned bringing his son into the business, eventually. I attached the photo, a screenshot of Chase's Instagram post, finally running this place. I added the timestamp. I added the geotag coordinates showing he was in the executive suite. Then, I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the state's business registry. I searched for DM Strategic Systems, LLC. My LLC. Most people thought I was just an employee. But 16 years ago, when I built the original tracking architecture, the company was cash poor. Martin couldn't afford my consulting fee. So, instead of cash, I took ownership of the code. The core middleware, the digital glue that connected our warehouse inventory to the shipping logistics, was licensed to the company by my LLC. The contract was renewed annually. It was currently valid, but there was a termination clause. Clause 4.2. The licensor, me, reserves the right to revoke the license immediately upon evidence of gross negligence, unauthorized access by non-vetted personnel, or reputational risk to the licensor's intellectual property. Chase sitting at my desk, unvetted, posting selfies, was the definition of unauthorized access. I typed a new email, not to Martin, not to the board. To compliance at Luxec Industrial, com subject. Urgent, material breach of acquisition terms / license revocation warning. I didn't hit send yet. I needed one more piece of leverage. I needed to know exactly how much damage Chase was doing right now. I pulled up the remote admin console on my phone. I still had my credentials. Martin hadn't revoked them because Martin didn't know how to revoke them. I watched the logs scroll by in real time. User, CVance guest access, attempting to access payroll data executive comp. Access denied. User, CVance attempting to access vendor contracts global shipping. Access denied. User, CVance attempting to access admin tools user permissions. My breath hitched. He was trying to elevate his own permissions. If he managed to get admin rights, he could accidentally wipe the vendor database. Then a new log entry appeared. User, admin Martin Vance, granting elevated permissions to user, C. Vance. Martin just gave him the keys. I stared at the screen. Martin had just bypassed the security protocols I spent a decade perfecting to give his son unrestricted access to the system during a federal audit window. That was it, the gun was loaded. I hit send on the email to Luxec. Then I drove to the storage unit where I kept the physical backups of the source code. If they were going to burn the house down, I was making sure I had the blueprints to build the next one. I didn't go back to the office. I went home. I made tea. I sat in my living room, surrounded by the silence of a house that I had often neglected for the sake of that company. At 2:15 p.m., my phone rang. It was Martin. I let it go to voicemail. At 2:17 p.m., it rang again. Martin, at 2:20 p.m., a text. Donna, call me. Now, at 2:25 p.m., another text. Legal just got an email from Luxec. What did you do? I sipped my tea. The pain in my back was fading, replaced by the grim satisfaction of consequences arriving on schedule. At 3:00 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Sarah, my lead engineer. She looked frantic. I opened the door. Sarah stood there, breathless, holding her laptop bag like a shield. Donna, she gasped, you have to come back. It's a slaughter. Come in, Sarah, I said calmly. Tea. Donna, Luxec just suspended the integration talks. Their lawyers sent a cease and desist regarding the data transfer. They cited security compromise by unauthorized personnel. She followed me into the kitchen, pacing while I poured her a cup. Martin is freaking out, she continued. He's screaming at it to find out who leaked the Instagram post to them. He thinks it's a corporate spy. It wasn't a spy, I said. Ting down, it was me. Sarah froze, cup halfway to her mouth. You. I sent them the screenshot, Sarah. And I informed them that the middleware license is currently at risk due to unauthorized admin access. Sarah's eyes widened. The middleware? Wait, the DM Stratsys module? That's you, Donna, more strategic systems. I nodded. Martin never read the dependency documentation. He thinks the company owns that code. They don't. They license it from me. Sarah sank into a chair. A slow, terrified smile spread across her face. Oh my God, if you pull that license? The trucks stop moving. The scanners go dark. The whole platform bricks itself. Correct. And Chase. Chase has admin access, I said, which violates the terms of my license agreement. I can shut it down, Sarah, legally, right now. Sarah laughed. It was a hysterical, jagged sound. Martin just called an all-hands meeting. He's going to blame the leak on a disgruntled employee. He's going to try to pin this on someone in the department. Let him, I said, because while he's doing that, Luxec's legal team is reading the email I just sent them. The one with the timestamps of Martin granting admin privileges to a user with no background check. Sarah looked at me with a mix of awe and fear. What do you want me to do? Go back, I said. Say nothing, just watch. And when Martin asks you if the system can run without the DM Strat module, you tell him the truth. Which is? That without that module, he's trying to run a logistics empire on a pocket calculator. By 4:30 p.m., the chaos had bled out of the building and into the digital sphere. I watched it unfold from my living room. Chase's Instagram post had been picked up by a niche industry blog, Logistics Weekly. The headline read, Nepotism or Negligence? CEO's son takes the helm at Vance Logistics amidst acquisition. The comments were brutal. Drivers, warehouse workers, and industry analysts were tearing the company apart. I'm waiting for my paycheck and this kid is posting selfies. Luxac needs to run. This place is a circus. Martin was losing control of the narrative, but he wasn't done fighting. At 5:00 p.m., I received an email from the company's general counsel, a man named Greg who had always been decent to me, but was ultimately Martin's bulldog. Subject: Notice of Suspension/Intellectual Property Inquiry. Donna, we have reason to believe you have shared confidential internal communications with a third party, Luxac Industrial. This is a violation of your NDA. Furthermore, we are reviewing your claims regarding ownership of the middleware architecture. Be advised that all code created during your employment is the property of Vance Logistics. We demand you return all company assets immediately and cease communication with the buyer. They were doubling down. They were going to try to claim I stole the code. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, sharpest shark in the contract law pool, a woman named Alina who had drafted the original licensing agreement 16 years ago. Alina, I said, they're challenging the ownership. I saw the email, Alina said, her voice crisp. I already drafted the response. I'm attaching the original contract, signed by Martin in 2008, specifically acknowledging that the DM Strat architecture is a licensed third-party asset. I'm also attaching the invoices where they paid your LLC purely for licensing fees for the last decade. It's bulletproof, Donna. Good, send it. There's more, Alina said. Luxac contacted me directly. My pulse quickened, and they want a meeting. With you, not Martin, with you, tonight. They can't meet with me, I said. I'm still technically an employee. It's a conflict of interest. Not if you resign, Alina said. Constructive dismissal, hostile work environment. They replaced you with an unqualified relative and created a liability risk you couldn't legally be party to. We draft the resignation letter now, effective immediately. Then you're a free agent. I looked at the clock, 5:15 p.m. If I resigned, I lost my severance. I lost my tenure. I burned the bridge completely. But if I stayed, I was complicit in Martin's disaster. Do it, I said. Draft the letter. Donna, Alina said, her voice softening. Are you sure? Once we send this, there's no going back. You're declaring war. I thought about the mud on my desk. I thought about the vape smoke. I thought about Martin telling me to go home because the heavy lifting was done. I'm not declaring war, Alina, I said. I'm ending one. At 5:30 p.m., the resignation letter hit Martin's inbox. At 5:31 p.m., the server logs showed a massive spike in activity. Chase was panicking. He was trying to delete files. He was trying to scrub his user history. But he didn't know that the DM Strat module had a mirroring protocol. Every file he deleted was instantly backed up to my secure server. He was distro. Ying evidence, and I was catching every single byte of it. At 5:45 p.m., I got a text from Sarah. Martin just fired Greg. He's screaming in the conference room. He's calling you a traitor. He says he's going to sue you for everything you own. I smiled. Let him try, I texted back. Then I put on my blazer. My back still hurt, but I felt taller than I had in years. I had a meeting with Luxac to get to. The meeting took place in the neutral, sterile ground of a hotel conference room 3 miles from the office. It was the kind of room designed to absorb sound and joy. Heavy beige curtains, mahogany table, and pitchers of ice water that sweated onto the coasters. I sat on one side with Alina. Across from us sat the Luxac acquisition team, 3 men and a woman who looked like they ate balance sheets for breakfast. At the head of the table was Marcus Thorne, Luxac's VP of Strategy. He hadn't said a word since we entered, just tapped a silver pen against his notebook. At 7:00 p.m. sharp, the double doors burst open. Martin didn't walk in, he stormed in. He was flanked by Greg, the the general counsel he had fired and apparently rehired in a panic within the last hour. Martin looked like a man who had been running against the wind, hair slightly askew, tie loosened, a sheen of sweat on his upper lip that the fluorescent lights magnified mercilessly. "This is illegal," Martin announced, slamming his briefcase onto the table. "This is a conspiracy to devalue my company. I will have the SEC on the phone by morning." Thorne stopped tapping his pen. He looked at Martin with the expression one might reserve for a waiter who had just dropped a tray of soup on a tuxedo. "Mr. Vance," Thorne said, his voice terrifyingly soft, "we didn't invite you." "It's my company," Martin hissed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "And she is my employee. And she is currently holding my intellectual property hostage to extort a better severance package." I didn't move, I didn't blink. I just rested my hands on the table, fingers interlaced. "I resigned at 5:30 p.m., Martin," I said quietly. "I'm not your employee, and as for the property..." I looked at Alina. Elena slid a single document across the polished wood. It was the licensing agreement from 2008, signed in Martin's own flamboyant scrawl. Clause 4.2, Elena cited from memory. "Licensor reserves the right to terminate usage upon evidence of gross negligence or data insecurity. We aren't extorting you, Mr. Vance. We are protecting our asset from your son." Martin laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "My son, Chase, is a digital native. He was exploring the system. He was learning. You're trying to frame a 25-year-old boy for what? Clicking the wrong button." "No," I said, "for deletion of evidence." I opened my laptop. I spun it around so the screen faced Thorne and the Luxec team. "This," I said, pointing to the scrolling log on the screen, "is a real-time mirror of the server activity from the last 2 hours. Since I resigned, user Vance, using the admin privileges you granted him, Martin, has permanently deleted 3 years of vendor history, the 2023 tax compliance folders, and the entire archive of safety inspection reports." The room went so cold, you could have stored meat in it. Thorne leaned forward, his eyes narrowing behind his rimless glasses. "Deleted." "He thought he was scrubbing his browser history," I explained, my voice devoid of pity. "But because he didn't understand the directory structure, he was wiping the root folders. He's currently formatting the primary drive for the warehouse logistics." Martin's face drained of color. He looked at the screen, then at me. That's a lie. You're making that up. You're the hacker. You're doing this remotely." "I'm not touching the system, Martin," I said. "I'm just watching it burn. And because my LLC owns the middleware that mirrors the data, I have the only backup in existence." I paused, letting the weight of that statement settle on the room like a lead blanket. "The company doesn't have the data anymore, Martin. I do." Thorne turned his gaze slowly from the screen to Martin. The look wasn't just anger anymore, it was finality. "You let an unauthorized user wipe the due diligence files," Thorne said, "during an active acquisition." "It's a glitch," Martin shouted, his voice cracking. "Donna rigged it. She's trying to steal the deal." "I don't want the deal," I said, cutting him off. "I want to protect my reputation. My code is running that warehouse. If it crashes, my name is on the architecture, so I'm revoking the license. As of right now, the DMStrat module is offline." I pressed a single key on my laptop, Enter. On the screen, the scrolling log stopped. A red line of text appeared, license token REVOKED. System halt. "What did you do?" Martin whispered. "I turned off the engine," I said. Silence, absolute ringing silence. Then Martin's phone buzzed, then Greg's PH. Then the Luxec team's phones. "My warehouse manager just texted me," one of the Luxec analysts said, looking at his device. "The scanners at the Vance facility just went dark. The trucks can't print manifests. The line is stopped." Martin stared at me. For the first time in 16 years, I saw him truly understand who I was. I wasn't the help. I wasn't the furniture. I was the one holding the floorboards together. "Turn it back on," Martin pleaded, his bravado dissolving into desperation. Donna, please, we can talk about a bonus, a raise, whatever you want. It's not about money, Martin, I said, closing my laptop. It's about competence, and you don't have it. Thorne stood up, he buttoned his jacket. Mr. Vance, Thorne said, the acquisition is terminated effective immediately due to material breach of contract and catastrophic data loss. Our legal team will be in touch regarding damages for the wasted time and resources. No, Martin grabbed Thorne's arm. Thorne shook him off with a look of pure disgust. You can't walk away, we have a signed letter of intent. You have a hollow shell of a company run by a child, Thorne said. He looked at me. Ms. Moore, if you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you privately, regarding the data you possess. Martin stood there, alone at the head of the table, surrounded by the wreckage of his own arrogance. He looked at Greg, but the lawyer was already packing his bag, distancing himself from the blast radius. You're fired, Martin whispered at me. I know, I smiled. Best day of my life. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. By the next morning, the glitch at the warehouse had made the local news. Trucks were backed up for 2 miles down the highway, unable to load or unload. The drivers were furious. The clients were canceling contracts by the hour. Martin tried to issue a press release blaming a cyber attack. The internet, fueled by Chase's viral selfie, knew better. The #Nepo crash was trending higher than the acquisition news ever had. I didn't watch the news. I sat on my back porch, watching the rain wash the pollen off the deck. My back was sore, but for the first time in years, the tension in my shoulders was gone. At 11:00 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't Martin. It was Cynthia Shaw, the chair of the board. Donna, she said, her voice was tight, humbled. We need to talk. I'm listening, Cynthia. Martin has been placed on administrative leave, she said, pending a vote for removal. Chase has been banned from the premises. Security escorted him out an hour ago. He tried to take the ergonomic chair with him. I let out a short, dry laugh. Of course he did. Donna, the system is down, Cynthia continued, her voice trembling slightly. We are bleeding money. Every minute the trucks don't move, we lose $10,000. Luxec is threatening to sue us into oblivion unless we can restore the data and the operations immediately. That sounds like a difficult problem, I said, sipping my tea. We need you back, she said. Name your price, double your salary, retention bonus. We'll give you the corner office. Just, please turn the key. I looked out at the rain. I thought about the 16 years. I thought about the missed Thanksgiving. I thought about the sneakers on my desk. I'm not coming back as an employee, Cynthia, I said. I'm done with performance reviews. I'm done with asking for permission to do my job. Then what? She asked. Consultant. No, I said, partner. I laid out the terms I had drafted with Alina over breakfast. My LLC will license the system to the company. The rate is triple what you were paying before. The contract is 5 years, guaranteed, with no termination clause for the buyer. Triple, Cynthia choked. Donna, that's cheaper than bankruptcy, I interjected. And one more thing. Yes. I want a seat on the board. A voting seat. If I'm going to save this ship, I want to make sure no one hands the wheel to a child ever again. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear Cynthia breathing. I could hear the faint sound of sirens in the background, probably the police dealing with the traffic jam at the warehouse. I'll have the papers drawn up within the hour, she said. Good, once the ink is dry, I'll upload the backup. I hung up. 2 hours later, a courier arrived with the documents. I signed them on my kitchen counter. I scanned them and sent them back to Alina. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into my private server. I authorized the DM Strat license token. I initiated the data restore from the backup mirror. System restore in progress, 1%, 5%. I watched the bar load. It took 40 minutes. When it hit 100%, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "We're live, trucks are moving, you're a goddess." I didn't reply, I just closed the laptop. A week later, the Luxec deal went through, but the terms had changed. I weren't buying Martin's company anymore. They were buying a company where the technology was licensed from me. Martin was bought out for pennies on the dollar, his golden parachute reduced to a frantic unraveling of lawsuits. Chase was scrubbed from the internet, his CEO era lasting exactly 6 hours. I went into the office one last time to clear out my personal effects. The new CEO, a woman Luxec had brought in, someone serious and sharp, met me at the door. "Ms. Moore," she said, shaking my hand with genuine respect, "we're honored to have you on the board." "Happy to be here," I said. I walked to my old office. The desk had been cleaned, the mud was gone, but my chair was there. I picked up the framed photo of my dog. I picked up my "I survived another meeting" mug. I looked at the view one last time. It was a good view, but the view from my porch was better. I walked out of the building, past the security guards who nodded at me, past the reception desk where the interns whispered my name like a legend. I walked to my car, tossed my box in the passenger seat, and drove away. I didn't turn the radio on. I just listened to the hum of the engine, a system working exactly as designed. Martin had wanted a legacy. He got one. He would always be remembered as the man who tried to replace the architect with a tourist. And me, I was just Donna, the woman who read the fine print,